wrap up this edition of Late Night Health, we're going to visit Marcia Hines. She is the author of I Know You're In There. It's a book about her war against autism. Marcia joins us from Southern California. Marcia, welcome to Late Night Health. Is autism growing, and why is it growing?
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. And I do believe it's growing. It's not, some people say it's because of better diagnostic techniques. That's not true. I mean, you can't miss a kid with autism. It is growing, and unfortunately, it's at epidemic numbers. It's 1 in 50 now, according to the CDC.
1 in 50 children have autism. Now, your son had it, Ryan.
Yes, he did. And for boys, it's 1 in 36, what's even higher.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes.
At the same time, your son is in his mid-20s, has a master's degree, and is gainfully employed in the engineering field.
He is. He's an aerospace engineer, and as a matter of fact, he's the liaison between his company and the airlines. So his social skills are pretty good. But it wasn't always that way.
I'm going to ask this question. Can autism, in your mind, at this point in time, be cured?
I don't think, for me, I don't look at it as a cure. I kind of look at it kind of like diabetes. It's managed. My son has to take certain medications to keep his immune system functioning properly. And it's almost like how a diabetic needs insulin to feel okay. So I wouldn't say he's cured because he's still dependent on these medications to help his body work the way it should.
What kind of medications? I mean, in the 60s, autism was treated with Ritalin to calm the kids down.
No, nothing like that. And actually, I believe that that's really harmful to our kids because, Ritalin shuts down the blood flow to certain areas of the brain, and that's not something you want to do. But in my mom, I'm not a doctor, so I can't really explain all that to you.
Right.
But in my mom terms, you just, it's all about blood flow. Blood flow means function. When Ryan was first diagnosed, he had something called a neurospect, which now could probably be compared to a functional MRI.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is it measures blood flow to different areas of the brain. And when he was first diagnosed, it showed that there was a lot of shutdown in some areas of his brain, and that was due to the inflammation in his brain. But once we treated his immune system, we repeated the test, and it showed that the areas of the brain that did not get enough blood flow were much improved.
When you were sitting across the desk from the doctor after going through what I would imagine were pretty extensive testing, and he gave you the diagnosis, your son is autistic, how did you and your husband, Frank, react?
Well, first of all, they do a lot of testing, but they don't do a lot of medical testing. It's all behavioral, and it's all sheets, and they ask you, what do they do here? And it's all very subjective. It's not like they have a medical test, which I find a problem with. But when you hear that word autism, all of a sudden you're terrified, and you hope, and you pray that the doctor's wrong. Autism is medical, and it's treatable. That's the good news. The bad news is that most physicians don't know that it's treatable, and it's very difficult to find one who knows how to do that.
It's also a difficult diagnosis, is my understanding.
It is because it's very subjective in nature, but, there's ways to diagnose it with actually brain specs or functional MRIs. And the one thing parents have to realize that the reason I wrote this book is so that they know that it no longer has to mean game over. When you hear the word autism, it doesn't mean it's the end of the line. I mean, if you would have told me that when my son was 4 and so weird and I couldn't get through to him at all, I wouldn't have believed you. But I'm here to tell you that my kid, who's now an aerospace engineer and doing very well, because we treated his autism medically, he got better. And the medical treatment is also not enough because it's almost like even if you could wave a magic wand and make their bodies better, they still wouldn't act normal. You still have to catch them up on everything they missed, almost like you catch up a stroke victim after they've had a problem.
Let's back up a second.
Okay.
What were the symptoms that you saw in Ryan that led you to believe that something was wrong? I mean, was he verbal at 4 or?
Well, he did not have much language, and the language that he did have was only to get what he wanted. It was never any conversational. He was very different from other kids, and he had intense emotions. When we used to watch Sesame Street, there used to be a family called the Heartstrongs, and they were called the Heartstrongs because they felt everything very strongly. And we used to use that as a nickname for Ryan. We called him Mr. Heartstrong. He had intense emotions, and he didn't cry. All he did was scream. He made strange noises, and he appeared very silly and almost drunk at times. Sometimes he was very hyper, and other times he was very lethargic and had no energy at all. And another symptom was repetitive behaviors. If I had let him, his favorite thing to do was to carry this stupid little portable radio around our house and plug it into every outlet over and over and over again. And when he wasn't doing that, he was traveling from room to room and turning off and on all the lights and the faucets.
Wow. The repetitive behavior I've heard of in talking about autism over the last few years, especially a few months ago when we were talking quite a bit about bass clef bliss, a documentary on the life of a young man who was diagnosed around 3 or 4 years old and is now a musician and going to college.
I love those stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the idea of mainstreaming and being part of society, I think, is what everybody wants for their children.
Right.
And then at the same time, when you hear about something like autism, you wonder why. The diagnosis had to have affected the family. So how did, first of all, you and your husband react to this? Were you on the same side? Did one of you say, "Oh my," and give up? Oh.
Well, it sort of was different. I have to tell you, it created a lot of stress in the family, and there was a lot of arguing about what we should do about Ryan, mostly because neither of us knew what to do. Nothing seemed to work, and there wasn't anyone out there to help us. There was no one for us to go to. We felt all alone on what I call Autism Island. You were isolated from the rest of the world because nobody wanted to hear you talk about your weird kid and all the things that were going on. I mean, people don't want to hear, negative things or ugly things.
Of course not. If a child is diagnosed with autism, would you recommend that parents tell other people about it?
Well, the way I did it was a little bit different. I think it's really important to get a support group. There's a group out there called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism, and they have support groups all over the United States, and they're absolutely wonderful in supporting families. Now, when we did this, it was 1992, and it wasn't as prevalent as it is now, and you have to understand there was no internet, there was no nothing. So we were on our own and very isolated. We were away from everybody in our own family because instead of being in California with the rest of the family, we were in Minnesota because my husband was a pilot for Northwest Airlines, and that's where they were based. So, it was very hard.
And what about his sister, Megan? How did she react to this? Is she older or younger than Ryan?
Ryan's 26 and Megan's 30. And Megan was our light because Megan, she was so funny because when I first brought Ryan home from the hospital, I remember that first night I had everybody take care of Ryan and I crawled into bed with Megan and I said to her, we were talking and cuddling and she looked at me and she said, "Mom, I was okay when he was in your tummy, but I didn't really want him to come out." And I think that kind of sums up what it was like. It was hard on her because he was difficult. He would bite her, and he would squeeze her, and he would pinch her till she cried. And then she'd ask me, "Mom, is it okay if I hit him?" And I'd say to her, "Once he's better, you can hit him." And that's still a joke with them today, because whenever he makes her mad, she turns around and slugs him, and they both laugh.
And they're closer now, obviously.
Yes. Well, he really influenced what she ended up doing, because she ended up going into the field, and she does what's called applied behavior analysis with kids. Mm-hmm. She's a supervisor for other behavior therapists, and she's amazing at this because, she had her first ABA training session at age 7. So she's been doing this her whole life, and it comes very naturally to her. And she makes a difference in kids' lives every day, and I'm so proud of who she is.
You should be. We're speaking with Marcia Hines. She's the author of I Know You're In There, Winning Our War Against Autism. Autism, in talking with doctors and professionals and other parents of children, it would seem to me that there has to be a multi-pronged approach, and that to working with an autistic child, and at the same time, not everything works for everyone. It's not one size fits all.
It's definitely not one size fits all. Each of these kids have different medical issues. And what's really sad is that sometimes their medical issues aren't even addressed because doctors think that it's a developmental disorder and there's nothing that can be done. And if you treat it as a developmental disorder, these kids have serious stomach issues, and those are never even addressed. And how sad is that these kids don't get treatment for anything that any other kid would get.
You mean they have upset stomachs or digestive problems? And
they do have a lot of digestive problems. They have a lot of... Ryan used to look like he was a little Biafra baby when he was little because he was so skinny.
But he had a big
tummy. He wouldn't
tummy.
Absorb anything. And his stomach was always distended. And, he was in a lot of pain. A lot of these kids have constant constipation, or else they have constant diarrhea. It just doesn't work right. And you need to treat those things so that then they can get better. But it's not just one thing that you have to treat. It's multiple issues that cause these problems. And that's what makes this so hard to treat.
We're going to continue our conversation in just a couple of moments. If you would like more information about the book, I Know You're In There, visit latenighthealth.com, look under Marcia in the guest tabs, and we'll have her picture and cover of the book right there, as well as a link to the website. This is Late Night Health. Like us at facebook.com/Late Night Health so that our friend Kevin Stern has something to do. I'm Mark Allen. We will continue. Don't go away. More coming up. Late Night Health continues. We're speaking about autism with Marcia Hines. She's written a book called I Know You're In There. She's about to give away a lot of books and an upcoming event. And I guess you and your husband have determined that all the profit that you make from the book is turned back into helping others learn about autism and how to treat it.
That's true. And I have to tell you how impressed I am that you know that it takes a multi-pronged approach to help these kids, because most people don't know that. They think if they do the medical part, that's enough. Or they think if they do the behavioral part, that's enough. But the medical only makes it possible for our kids to be able to learn, and you still have to catch them up. And that's where the programs like ABA or Floor Time or Sunrise, or there's one called RDI or Pivotal Response. There's a million of them out there, and they all work if your kid is at the place where they're able to learn. And one thing I wanted to point out is that the hardest part about having a kid with autism is that they give you nothing. They don't look at you, they don't talk to you, and it's hard to keep talking to a kid who gives you nothing. Ryan sometimes it felt like I was talking to somebody where the lights were on, but nobody was home. It was almost like he was not there. And to be honest, I didn't know if he was in there or not. But it didn't really matter because I kept talking to him constantly about nothing. It's kind of funny because if we go to a party and there's somebody who is not very talkative, they always seem to find me because I can carry on a conversation for both of us. You know?
Yes, you can. We met last week, and you can certainly do that, Marcia.
Sorry, Mark. I should shut up and let you talk.
No, it's okay. One of the things that gets me about autism in general is that, I mean, there are a lot of theories about the cause, from nutrition to vaccinations, the environment, eating. I mean, there's just so many different things, and we really don't know what causes autism. We do have some treatment options available, and you have pointed many of those out. Can an autistic child grow up to become, like your son, a vital part of the community?
I think they can. I think right now Ryan is the exception rather than the rule, but I know many other kids who have done it, and they've gone a similar path that we did. And that was treating the medical and at the same time doing some sort of rehab to catch them up and teach them all the things they missed. I had to directly teach Ryan things that other kids just knew. And that
For
was
example, he didn't know how to smile. If you go on, there's a magazine article that just came out from the UK, and it's on the Autism Eye magazine. And if you go to that website, they will send you this magazine digitally for free. And there's a picture of Ryan in there, and it shows him when he couldn't smile. And when I'd say smile, what he would do is kind of make an O with his mouth, almost like a choir boy look. And he didn't know how to smile, and I had to teach him that. He didn't know how to cry. He would just scream. I would have to I taught him how to cry. I mean, I taught this kid how to do everything, and it was exhausting. And if I would have known in the beginning how much I had to do, I may not have started. But it was good I didn't know. Of course it is. Of course it is.
Because sometimes, the hardest things are accomplished by people who are too stupid to realize they're even possible.
Oh, I would not say that you're stupid.
But
not at all. You're a very smart woman and a very bright lady. The author of I Know You're In There, Winning Our War Against Autism, Marcia Hines. And what would be the one thing you would tell parents when they receive that first diagnosis? You've got 10 seconds.
Do the medical. Find a doctor. That's the hardest. And then once you do that, you need to do the rehab and realize that some of our relatives don't get it. They think it's parenting and that you're just the worst parent in the world. And repeat to yourself over and over again, that autism is not my fault until you actually believe it.
Marcia, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Good luck. Hold on, okay?
Okay.
I'm Mark Allen. Thank you for joining us this week on Late Night Health. We'll be back next week. I wish you to have a great week, a happy week, and most importantly, a healthy week. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Late Night Health with Mark Allen. Join us again next week.
Do you have $10,000 or more in credit card debt that is straining your monthly budget? Have you been turned down for a personal loan, credit card, or mortgage? We'll quickly connect you with expert financial resources that provide free information that helps save you time and money and get you back on track. Don't spend hours a day searching for help. With just one phone call, we'll quickly connect you with your debt solution. We have programs to settle your debt, lower your bills, and cut your monthly payments. Call 800-989-8123 to get a free debt analysis to help you reduce your debt and get you back on track. The call is free, secure, and confidential. Call 800-989-8123. 800-989-8123. 800-989-8123. That's 800-989-8123.